Welcome to One Bite is Everything, the podcast that connects every bite you take to the bigger world, sparking curiosity and inspiring you to ask more questions about the food on your plate. And today's episode starts on a small farm in New Hampshire, but has absolutely everything to do with the food on your plate, especially from those farms that are closest to you. Today, farmer Jeremiah Vernon leaves his work tending chickens and lambs to give us the inside scoop at Vernon Family Farm in New Hampshire, where passion meets perseverance on the front lines of modern farming. From unexpected legal battles with neighbors to the evolving world of agritourism, this conversation reveals the raw challenges and triumphs of running a family farm today. This isn't only about one farm. It's a window into a larger conversation about how we value and understand the food that we eat and the hands that grow it. As you listen to this candid conversation, I hope it offers you a broader perspective on how such conflicts reflect a disconnect between consumers and farmers and an authentic understanding of what it takes to produce our food. By the end of this episode, I hope that you will see how important it is to get to know your farmers, to understand them, and to support them. Let's dive in to an unfiltered, eye-opening look at what it really takes to grow food, nurture community, and ultimately to fight for the right to farm.
So we have three abutters that are the three people who are located physically the closest to our operation. We have more abutters than that, but some of them are further away out in the fields and they don't seem to care. Of those three abutters, two of them moved in next to us. So we were already operating for 5 years, running our business. They moved in next to us. One of them has been here from the beginning. One of them we've been fighting with our lawyer since the beginning. I can't tell you why they don't want us here doing what we're doing. They just don't want us here doing what we're doing for that neighbor who's been there for 10 years. The three neighbors got together. One of those three neighbors is exceedingly wealthy. And they all got together and teamed up and got the biggest law firm in New Hampshire and are basically suing us for, I think it's 4 counts. And this has been a very big surprise for Nicole and I because we didn't know that you can be fully approved by all the towns, boards, and states and everything. Fully said you can do everything you're doing and then still get sued for doing it and still have to prove that you're allowed to do it. I don't want to get too dark, but it's definitely a guilty till proven innocent situation. It's your duty to prove that you're innocent. It's not their duty to prove that you're guilty.
And what are their official legal complaints?
So one of them is that we're in violation of our conservation easement by parking our customers' cars on our property, so we have one field that's in conservation that's near our store. And whenever we have an event or overflow parking for the store, if we're busy, folks are encouraged to park out in that field. So in my opinion, that is directly related to farming. I mean, a customer coming to park their car to buy the product and visit your farm, I think most farmers would view that as part of their farming business. The Conservation Commission has approved us parking out there. The consultant they hire approved us. The select board approved us. My three neighbors are saying we're still not allowed to do that. So that's one thing they're suing us for. Another is they're suing us because they're saying our agritourism events are not agritourism events. They are commercial activities and should not be allowed.
What is the distinction there? What's agritourism versus commercial? What are they saying?
Well, this is going to be a state-by-state issue. New Hampshire has, for better and for worse, really put no guardrails on the definition of agritourism. It's basically almost anything that happens on a farm. So like a wedding, something that feels sort of very ancillary to the actual operation of, say, like the growing of food or the selling of it can be included. So there's, for example, in our agritourism events, we have live music and we have food and drink through catering companies that we sell, but the main ingredients for the food have to come from our farm. So when people are on the farm for the dinner, the main reason we do it is we're trying to sell, a few $1,000s worth of chicken or whatever. So they're arguing that our agritourism events are not agritourism events. to clarify, this is not a unique situation. I mean, there's plenty of other farms in New Hampshire that have music and pizza night and burger night and you name it, like farm dinners. I mean, we didn't feel like we were creating a new activity when we did this, but the town feels very much like we are, and our neighbors.
Agritourism in New Hampshire refers to offering the public a chance to experience farming and rural life firsthand. This can include activities like visiting working farms, participating in pick-your-own events, and attending agricultural festivals. Farm dinners are a popular aspect of agritourism where guests enjoy meals made with fresh, locally grown ingredients. Many farm dinners aim to feature as much locally sourced food as possible with a strong emphasis on ingredients grown on the farm or within the region. The idea is to provide guests with a true farm-to-table experience, but the proportion can vary depending on what is available on the farm at the time of the event. Some farms may rely on local partnerships with other nearby producers for certain ingredients that they do not grow themselves. These experiences are there to provide insight into the state's agricultural practices and offer a unique way to connect with the land and the people who farm it. It's a way to learn about food production and rural culture. What's more, as it becomes harder and harder for farmers, especially small ones, to make a living, the opportunity to diversify their income streams to meet the demands of modern communities, to gather, to get married, to shop, is important and sanctioned for now by municipalities like Newfields in New Hampshire.
So the neighbors are suing us for that, saying we're running illegal activities. We have a catering company, and it is a registered catering company, but they're suing us saying we're running an illegal restaurant, which I'm like, I don't even know. Besides saying like we don't have a restaurant, I'm not sure how to, like we don't have a restaurant license. We are not inspected for a restaurant. We're inspected as a catering company. Like we have all of our HAFSA plans. Like I don't know what to say. And then the last thing is they're suing us because they said we falsely represented ourselves to the State Liquor Commission, which the State Liquor Commission doesn't think so. So again, this is why you can get pretty depressed. Like it really doesn't have to make sense. All someone has to do is have enough money to waste it on making your life miserable, and they can.
There's a personal cost to these struggles. Every cease and desist notice isn't just a legal document. It's a reminder of the constant stress that weighs on a family determined to do what they love, to provide healthy food for their community while taking care of the land and fueling the local economy. Make no mistake, this is a battle that has reshaped the Vernons' lives, forcing them to balance their passion with the harsh realities of modern regulation. And it may be happening to a farm near you as well. I wonder, does this sit well with you? And have you ever met these people in person or talked to them?
Yes and no. So Scott Waxsmith is the abutter who is directly across the street from us. And I use their names because they're all on public record now. So Scott Waxsmith, the thing that's funny about him is he actually doesn't even live across the street. His son does. He lives down the road. So if he didn't want to be near us, he doesn't have to be, but he comes just to torment us. When we first moved in, his first words to us were, "I mind my business, you mind yours." Like not even hello, just his very first words, which in retrospect, I wish had been true, because ever since that day, he's just been all up in our business. So yes, I've met him. We don't talk now because it's a dangerous thing for us to talk. The other neighbors we've met, we've never really been overly friendly with them, just met them. And then they just decided, I don't know, that they just don't like us. So.
And are there other farms near you guys?
Yes and no. The only reason I clarify these things in such detail is because I've spent way too much time with my lawyer. The definition of farming is pretty broad. So for example, like there's a person down the road that sells trees, like nursery trees. Technically, that's a farming activity. It's under agricultural zoning. So there are other agricultural activities in our town, horses and stuff like that too. But we're the only production farm. We're the only farm in town that's growing food to sell, and the only farm in town that's selling it on our property. I say that with an asterisk. There's people who put hostas outside on the side of the road every year. Technically, that's running an agricultural activity. The town does not regulate those other businesses like they regulate ours. Ours is definitely the most regulated of all those businesses, mostly because the town has absolutely no understanding of what farming and agriculture means, but also because my neighbors have just filed every complaint they can possibly file.
Every state, and even down to the town level, has different definitions and zoning for agricultural businesses. In some cases, the definitions are vague and broad, and in others, they are specific down to the letter. I think it's a good idea for all of us to understand what those regulations are and how to protect the right of farmers to operate. Here's an example. During the pandemic, communities across the country saw more and more families adopting backyard flocks of laying hens by the millions. Chicks and more mature layers were sold out everywhere. Then regulations kicked in, and residents quickly became aware of the fact that they could or could not have chickens scratching around in their communities. A small example, but now look deeper. How close are you allowed to have a local farm producing for you? How are they limited? Or how limited could they become? It's a good thing to know. And with the town of Newfields, you've gone through a lot of hoops already, and you've come out victorious. Is that, I mean, it doesn't
Well,
feel, I don't feel victory. I don't feel the feeling of victory right now.
no, no.
But you
Pending
have
to
won, they've gone through all of the, details with a fine-tooth comb and have come out with, you still have the right to farm and you have the right to agritourism on your property. Am I wrong?
No, you're correct. I would say that the current site plan that took us 3 years of legal battles with the town to get is the right site plan for Vernon Family Farm and is a site plan that we can work within and still run our business. In that site plan, they triggered a whole bunch of improvements that we have to make to the property that are incredibly expensive, like probably over $200,000. And we haven't had the finances to make those improvements. So part of the issue is that we had to shut down one of our buildings and one of our activities because the improvements required to actually run those activities was more than we could afford. So instead of affording those activities, we just shut down the whole use of the building.
What were you going to use it for?
We were catering out of it. So it was like a pavilion, and we would roll in with all of our catering stuff. We would cater and then roll out. The town basically is requesting that it become a commercial kitchen. That was never the formal request, but the consequence of everything they've asked for, like grease traps and all this other stuff, is going to be the building of a commercial kitchen, even though we have a fully licensed commercial kitchen offsite that we do all that stuff in. So it's not like we were preparing food in this pavilion. Like we would roll in with a full professional cater, and then roll back to our commercial kitchen and do all the stuff that we were licensed to do. So even though we have an approved site plan, some of the improvements that are required have been so burdensome that we can't afford to make them. A consequence of being caught up in a legal battle is you can't get funding from most lenders because they won't give to you if you're in the middle of a court of being sued. So we're in a very dangerous, and I'm assuming my neighbors are very well aware of this dangerous position we're in, of having an incredible amount of legal expenses, having an incredible large amount of improvement expenses, and really we're just living day to day as far as whatever money we make is the money we have. We can't go out and get a loan to build something. It's just, if we have the money, we do it, and if we don't, we can't.
How much has this cost you, financially speaking?
If you just say costs versus there's been so much lost potential. I mean, we've had arrested development for the last 5 years. We haven't grown. We've lost employees because of it, because it was so stressful here, because it was are we open? Are we not open? We're getting cease and desisted. We had no plan because the plan would get blown up every 5 minutes. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've lost because of just distraction, exhaustion. I mean, it was all we did for 3 years was deal with a lawyer and deal with our town. And then the minute we got done with that, our neighbors sued us for all the things the town had spent 3 years approving us for, which is just outrageous.
And were they behind the town issue?
One of my neighbors, Scott Waxsmith, was very actively involved in all issues. Lynn Gerard and Ruth Patterson, the other two neighbors, and their husbands, Mark Gerard and Gerald Cox, they've been passively involved, but in my opinion, not involved enough to have, like, for example, when we got our site plan approved, there was a 30-day appeal period. None of them appealed during that 30-day appeal period. So like they had opportunity to put forth their opinion on the process and didn't. And then now are suing us for it. It's really just a war of attrition, honestly. It's just the only way we survive is our community is strong enough that they give us money. Because a little farm store on the side of the road in Newfields does not make enough money to cover all of these legal battles.
And you guys have a GoFundMe set up, and that has been helpful to you?
Incredibly helpful, and it's cliche, but every dollar counts. I mean, it's incredibly expensive to have. We have a great lawyer. I don't want to discount that. She does an excellent job for us. Her name's Amy Manzelli, and she's very knowledgeable about agriculture in the state. She's helped write policy. So like I couldn't ask for a better lawyer. Still costs a fortune.
I have to underscore here that this isn't just about a legal battle, but about a generational commitment to farming. Our generation's willingness to see and understand how important it is that we preserve farms, especially small farms in and near our communities. We all, and what I mean is we, the eaters, the consumers, the people who care about healthy food and clean environment, we need to see and value how important it is that we have people like the Vernons who are committed to a way of life rooted in tradition and with a passion for farming that sustains our communities. If we eliminate the desire and opportunity for farmers to tend that legacy of hard work and love for the land, well, then what? No more farms, fewer choices for our food. So much disappears. And your farm is something that you and your wife, Nicole, and your children and your staff are all very invested in. Tell me a little bit about the toll of this on you all.
Oh, geez. I mean, so we don't have any more employees. Not all of them left because of the town and the neighbors suing us, but it definitely, I saw it wear on them. There was accumulated stress. Like, they cared enough that to watch the farm just get beat up every day was exhausting for them. And they saw it in Nicole and myself, literally just depression, just being depressed. Farming requires a lot of pride. It requires a lot of, personal satisfaction. You're not going to get these, in general, huge wins. No one's going to give you a $10,000 Christmas bonus. Like, you're not going to get 4 weeks paid vacation. So like you have to love what you do, and you have to get satisfaction from the fact that you just worked hard, not that you made a lot of money. So when the joy gets taken out of the just working hard, just being on your property, it's really hard to function. And then things slip because you just don't have the passion for it like you used to. So Nicole and I go to counseling, therapy. My kids go to therapy. I mean, it was rough. I mean, explicitly drinking problems during that time, just from like, we would be planning to open an event on Friday at 4, and at 3:45 we would get these like encrypted emails from town councilmen saying, you're not allowed to do what you're doing. This is not a cease and desist, but we could cease and desist you. So it was like, am I cease and desisted? Am I not? Like, I thought I was allowed. You knew I was going to be doing this for 2 weeks now. Why wait till 15 minutes before? It was just like, and then I'd have to like send all my employees home and cancel the whole event because I was so scared to get cease and desisted. And we'd lose all the money from the prep that we had done. And it was just awful. It was just awful. And to farm in a place, I mean, I see my neighbors. Our farm is a lot of fields with a lot of abutters around. And these neighbors are visual. We see them. And they watch us, and things happen on farms that people don't understand because they don't live on farms. So, for example, like an animal dying, we're a livestock farm. And I know that happens sometimes if you're on a livestock farm, but my neighbors don't understand that, even though they eat meat, so if a sheep dies, like I can't have them see that because they're going to assume it's animal cruelty.
Comprehensive nationwide data that pinpoints exactly how many small local farms face opposition is really hard to come by, largely because many of these conflicts are local, dealt with at the municipal or county level, and aren't always tracked in a standardized way. However, several studies and reports offer some insight into the scale and nature of these challenges. The USDA Economic Research Service has identified that local zoning challenges and regulatory hurdles, often a manifestation of community opposition or NIMBY attitudes, we're going to get to that in a minute, are among the top obstacles reported by small and diversified farm operators. For instance, a 2015 USDA report on agritourism noted that roughly 35% of small farms cited local zoning and regulatory issues as significant challenges. In a study published in the Journal of Rural Studies, researchers found that in parts of the Northeast, up to 40% of small farm operators reported experiencing local opposition when trying to expand operations or launch agritourism initiatives. While these figures are region-specific, they suggest that such opposition is a substantial concern in many communities. Organizations like American Farmland Trust have consistently highlighted that restrictive zoning laws and local resistance are recurring issues for small farms. Although their reports often discuss these challenges qualitatively rather than providing a single nationwide statistic, they reinforce the idea that local opposition is both common and significant. While the exact nationwide percentage may vary and is difficult to pinpoint, these sources indicate that between roughly one-third and nearly half of small local farms in certain regions face notable opposition, often in the form of restrictive zoning, legal challenges, or other community resistance. This local resistance not only hampers growth and innovation, but also reflects broader tensions between evolving agricultural practices and established community norms.
I mean, they don't know anything, and they just sit in their big houses, and they have cameras all over their properties pointed at us. It's insane. They videotape us. They fly drones over, like private investigators. I mean, you name it, they've done it. It's the most insane thing.
I wanted to come back to NIMBY, a concept I mentioned that is reflected in data relating to small farms across the country. As more people leave rural towns for urban centers, perspectives change. They value rural areas for the nature, but just not too much nature. NIMBY, which stands for Not in My Backyard, describes the attitude of residents who oppose certain developments or changes in their local areas, even if those projects might benefit the broader community. NIMBY typically comes into play with projects perceived as disruptive or potentially lowering local quality of life. This includes facilities like waste treatment plants, prisons, power stations, or even housing developments. Even projects intended to serve the public good can face NIMBY resistance if local residents feel that they will bear negative impacts. The opposition often stems from concerns about property values, environmental impacts, noise, traffic, or changes to the character of a neighborhood. While residents might support the idea in principle, they prefer that such projects be located far away from where they live. In the case of Vernon Family Farm, the neighbors' legal challenges can be seen as a form of NIMBYism. Despite the farm operating legally and contributing to local food systems and community identity, some residents oppose its agritourism events and other operations because they believe it disrupts their preferred vision of the neighborhood. Their actions, such as filing lawsuits and enforcing or introducing strict interpretations of zoning laws, reflect a desire to control the character of their environment, even if it means impeding local innovation or economic opportunity. This situation illustrates a tension between traditional community interests and evolving local economies. When NIMBY sentiments dominate, they can hinder growth and innovation, limit diverse local experiences, and create conflict between long-standing residents and those driving positive change. Understanding NIMBYism in this context helps us see that the battle isn't just a legal or regulatory one. It's also a cultural conflict about what the community should look like, how progress should be managed, and who should manage it. What's interesting here is that a very small privileged group, often NIMBY leaders, seem to be out of step with the greater community who appreciate having a local farm right in their backyard. Nicole left her job teaching Spanish this year.
Yeah, the emotional toll on Nicole was so tremendous. Plus, it's hard to have two full-time jobs. And she was working on the farm and was a full-time teacher. And so she decided to take a leave of absence and has been working on the farm full-time this year, which has been amazing. One of the bright spots has been Nicole being here. You can't beat two owners working together as far as Nicole manages all of our markets, like all of our sales, and she's just going to put forth more effort than any employee ever will because it's her thing. So it's been good to see the store sales going up. Our social media has gone up a lot, and we're definitely getting more publicity, and we have a good audience now, which is our community is the strongest thing we have. The thing that we have that our neighbors do not have is community. So when they chirp and say something and we just tell the world what our neighbors said, it's not easy for them to have an opinion, which is fine with me.
So tell me about your community. Like, who are they? How far are they coming from? And what do they care about?
Our community is mostly, our in-person community is driven through our farm store and our events. So we draw a lot of folks from Portsmouth, Newburyport, Exeter, Stratham. We're located on the seacoast of New Hampshire. It's a relatively wealthy area. And we're open 5 days a week, and customers roll in and out just like they would at a grocery store. And we have enough customers now that the store makes quite a bit of money for us. It is our income stream. We don't do wholesale anymore. We don't do farmers markets anymore. We just do the farm store. So farm store customers, our demographic is typically 35 to 45-year-old women with families. But, that's just what the computer tells us. I mean, we know that we have a pretty diverse customer base. And then digitally, we have, call them fans, I guess, far afield, Australia, all over. And for example, with those folks, they don't shop the store, but we do get, generous donations to the GoFundMe from them, or just, Google reviews. I mean, all of it matters in the end, just adding up small little bits and pieces. So a lot of kids, which is great. I love having kids run around the farm. It's the best.
It's new or relatively new for you that you're sharing the turmoil that you've been through as a farming family. What's the difference between sort of keeping this under your hat, so to speak, and bringing people in to this crazy story that you're living through?
I think it's just mostly experience. Like, we've just been doing this now for so many years that we just have learned that sharing it is more successful than not. And I wouldn't say we were trying to hide it. We just didn't know what we were doing before. It was just so overwhelming. We were just sort of like, oh my God, this is insane. We've learned so much. We've learned how to communicate better with our community. When I say we, this is mostly Nicole. So Nicole has learned how to communicate really well with the community and she has learned how to turn negative moments into positive ones for us in a really brilliant way. So, for example, we received some hate mail and we shared that hate mail online, and she made sort of a call out, like, come to the store and help support us and, fight this hate mail. And we had a great day. We had maybe a $7,000 day at the store, like a great day. That's pretty powerful for us to have that kind of community that shows up when we've needed them to. And we've learned how to share that message better. I think also before, when we were fighting for our site plan, it felt so fragile as to where it would end up. Like, are they going to approve us or not? Like, if our farm store grows, are we just going to get punished? Like, how do we set up a site plan where we have room to be a business that's functioning? So we were really nervous about having a big kickback from the town board members if we just, we're hammering them online. Whereas with the neighbors, the ship has sailed. Who cares? So they're not going to come over for dinner anytime soon. It's also easier to say Lynn Gerard and Scott Waxsmith and, Ruth Patterson. Those are names of people in town versus the planning board, the select board. That's a little more ambiguous.
Why did you get into farming in the first place? How did this happen?
So I grew up in rural New Hampshire, dead end dirt road, and my family, I call it like typical backyard flock or backyard farm. Like we had 6 turkeys, dozen chickens, and sheep sometimes, goats sometimes. So we sort of had animals come and go. And we started processing when I was really young, a few turkeys a year on our own property, a few chickens a year, a sheep or two. And I honestly found that process very interesting. I didn't run away from it. I was more like, whoa, I didn't know like you could just take a chicken and turn it into chicken breast. Like I'd never seen that, and it really blew my mind. And there was a fairly large vegetable farm in town with a pick your own strawberry field at the end of our dirt road. So, I was constantly seeing people out working those fields, which is not normal for most New England folks. And a lot of those people were like friends of mine or my friends' brothers and sisters or whatever, local folks that work there. So I worked there a couple times and I really enjoyed it. But the thing that really made me fall in love with it was when I moved to go to college. I went to Bates College in Maine. There was a large organic dairy farm down the road from us, and they had a restaurant on it, and we'd go there for breakfast. And it was just like in my head, like the coolest place in the world. I can't tell you why. I just was enamored, and I would go places you weren't supposed to go, like in all the barns, upstairs, downstairs. I would just roam this farm, and eventually I got a job there, and that was 2008 or nine, and have basically been farming for other people. I did that for a number of years. Then we started our own farm.
Do you still have that same love for farming that you did? That sort of sense of awe that you did when you started?
Yes, and I would say in some ways that's one of the sadder parts about this is like if I didn't have to deal with all this bullshit, I could be genuinely happy with just sort of like working hard. Like I don't need a ton of money to be a happy person. I just want to go do what I want to do, which is out there grow food for people. I love animals. I love the process of growing animals. Nicole and I are heading out to a sheep school in Minnesota this year to learn a bunch. And like, that's just going to be so interesting to bring it home and then immediately apply that knowledge. And farming allows me to do that. It's like a palette, like you could be interested in making, olive oil infused with garlic and you can just grow garlic. It's just a place to go with all your curiosities. And I love having good food around. I love to cook. So yeah, I love farming still, which I honestly, sometimes I wish I didn't, because then we could just sell this whole thing and get out of here. But somehow I still love it.
What happens if your neighbors win?
They can't shut us down, but they would basically successfully eliminate our agritourism business.
Which would be the dinners and the concerts, that part?
Yeah. Which we would be probably the only farm in New Hampshire that's not allowed to do agritourism. Agritourism in New Hampshire is embedded in the definition of farming. So the town of Newfields adopted the state's definition of farming, which includes a definition for agritourism. So New Hampshire's a right to farm state. In theory, they can't say you can't do agritourism. They are allowed to regulate agritourism. So I guess the question would be then to them, like, what is agritourism then? What are we allowed to do?
Right. And it maybe is a slippery slope for them, because if they limit you, then they have to limit others. Or are they allowed to limit you and ignore others?
They definitely can property by property make regulations. So for example, like if your property didn't have parking access the way our property does, they could say you can't do all the things that Vernon gets to do because Vernon Family Farm has the parking to handle it. So on the safety side of things, like life safety, traffic parking, they could, custom create site plans for people.
Regulating agrotourism basically means setting up rules to make sure that everything runs smoothly and safely, both for farmers and visitors. These rules cover things like health and safety standards, making sure food is handled properly and things are kept clean, along with zoning laws that decide where these activities can happen. There are also guidelines to protect the environment, ensuring that the tourism doesn't harm natural resources or disrupt sustainable farming practices. On top of that, there are rules about taxes, liability, and the permits needed for activities like selling products or hosting events. Local governments may even regulate how agritourism is promoted to make sure that it aligns with broader tourism goals. However, regulation can be misused. Sometimes overregulation can place a heavy financial burden on small farms, making it harder for them to thrive, especially if compliance costs are too high. It can also be selectively enforced, with some farms being unfairly targeted while others go unchecked. In some cases, regulations might be used to restrict certain types of agritourism, limiting farmers' ability to grow their businesses. If the rules are too broad or unclear, it can cause confusion and even lead to legal battles. In the end, the goal of regulation is to help agritourism grow, but if not managed carefully, it can end up stifling innovation and putting unnecessary strain on farmers.
Just to say it overall, I think the main issue that we've come to in New Hampshire is that the disconnect between the public and farming has gotten so massive that people have absolutely no idea what it means to farm. And I don't want that to sound pretentious, but they don't. They just don't know. They think styrofoam wrapped is how food is. And so we're overcoming so much ignorance. And I think the thing that made us really sad is instead of folks engaging with the fact that they had no idea what they were talking about, they took a punitive approach of Vernon Family Farm. You need to prove to us that you're allowed to do everything you're doing. Which if they had just gone to any farm next door, like in the town over, they would have seen like, it's just not that astounding what we're doing.
And they're not complaining about the fact that you've got chickens or sheep.
They have. We have the Goldilocks problem. Like we've had our neighbors complain that there's no way we grow enough food to feed all of our customers, accusing us of buying in food and stuff like that, which we do buy in food, but it's like, you know, you have our chicken on the shelf and then I'll buy in my friend's beef because we don't raise beef. But then they'll also file complaints about how much our farm smells, saying we have too many animals over there.
Well, 2 of them moved in knowing you were a farm.
2 of them moved in next to us. The really wealthy people live up on Winnipesaukee in one of their island homes all summer. So I don't even know why they care what we're doing down here. They don't even live here in the summer. They're on their jet skis. And then one of my other neighbors, Scott Waxsmith, who complains. And then Scott Waxsmith lives in Florida for most of the year. And when he's not living in Florida, he lives down the road. He doesn't even live across the street.
It seems like a lot of what they're complaining about is built on absurdity.
Yeah, which I sort of think their real angle is just, you know, throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. And either way, it costs us a ton of money. I mean, not only are they wealthy, but they're splitting their bill 3 ways. Nicole and I are just defending ourselves.
So what's next for you guys? How are you going to weather the rest of this?
Don't know, really. It'd be interesting to have Nicole here because I think she has a different perspective than I do on this. I don't do too much planning for the future because I'm like, it could blow up at any minute. We could get sued by someone else tomorrow and then we're in 3 lawsuits. And this is not good for our business, but I don't spend much time planning. You know, I'm planning enough to like make sure we have all of our slaughter dates, you know, that kind of thing. But we're not doing the larger, longer term thought out improvements. We're just living day to day. Nicole's more balanced with that. She's more planning and thinking about the future and has excitement for that, which is great. So I guess when you ask what's next, I really don't know. I will say I have come to the conclusion that no one's going to force us to shut down. If Vernon Family Farm ends, it'll be because Nicole and I decide to stop doing it. I don't think we're going to reach a point where financially we're just so bankrupt we can't function. I also don't think the town or our neighbors are going to successfully shut us down. I think they could wear us out to the point where we've decided like this is just not worth the effort. If I could wave a magic wand, I would just be left alone. We have a site plan that says we're allowed to do everything we're doing, leave us alone. And that goes for the town regulators too. Like right now, the town regulators are trying to pass this new law in town or new zoning ordinance in town that says basically no food or drink can be served in any zoning other than commercial. So if your kid wants a lemonade stand on the side of the road, technically illegal. If you want to have a bake sale, technically illegal. If you want to, you know, have a farm to table dinner, not allowed. So we're going to be grandfathered in. So I'm not worried about that directly affecting us at the moment, but it's this continued like, instead of looking at agriculture and saying, how can we support it? It's looking at agriculture and saying, how can we restrict it? And I think that mindset is just very dark. It prevents growth for farms.
Let me connect that then with something that you said earlier, just about consumers and people want to put their head in the sand about the fact that a chicken has to die in order for it to become the chicken on your dinner plate. What are we going to do about our consumers across the country?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is I think transparency is actually what people want. So on our farm, for example, we just have a whole bunch of baby lambs born. We encourage people to come see the baby lambs. And they'll ask questions, why, what do you have these lambs for? And I'll tell them these are for meat. And, they'll say, oh, you can't name them. And I go, oh, no, we name all of them. My kids name every single lamb. And they love every single lamb. And they also love eating the lambs. And I think actually most people can get around to that idea and actually prefer to eat meat where they're like, oh my God, I held a baby lamb and it grew up and it got fed well. So we've practiced transparency. In the winter, especially, we bring all the animals up into like the barnyard. And so which is right near the store. So you shop the store and then you can walk, across the stone wall to the barnyard and you can see the lambs, there's chickens, there's llamas, sometimes there's pigs over there. So there's all that stuff there for people to see. And then they know directly when they go in the store, like when they buy salami, it's from those pigs. So that's what we've done. The other thing I think is when I say we, I mean us farmers, is we need to be convenient. I think convenience is one of the main driving factors for folks. One of the reasons we stopped doing farmers markets is we made the determination they're just explicitly inconvenient. Farmers go to the farmers markets to sell groceries, and what we found is most customers go to farmers markets to have an experience, and that's a disconnect there. And I think the reason is not most people aren't planning their shopping for their family from Thursday from 2:15 to 6 at the Exeter Farmers Market. They're just shopping when they have a moment and when they need food. So for us, like our farm store being open Wednesday through Sunday year round, 9 to 6, is our attempt to be that convenience. You don't have to call us if we're open. We are always open. We always have someone in the store. You don't have to worry about someone being there who doesn't know how to use a credit card. Like, it's a professional experience when you go in there. And I think that is huge. That being said, the vast majority of people around us still go to Market Basket and Hannaford's and the commercial supermarkets. I do understand that folks are going to want things like balsamic vinegar, and we don't carry that. So they're still going to go to the grocery store no matter what. We don't have popsicles, and you might want that for a party. So I accept that they're going to both coexist. But $10 of your purchase should go to a local farm at least. We've realized that a lot of folks want to support local in a lot of different ways. Some folks are going to come shop at the grocery store for the majority of their groceries. Some are going to stop in and spend $15 and then go to the grocery store and spend $200. Some are going to like us on Facebook. Some are going to go to events. Some are going to want the meat box share. So you need to create ways for your customers and your community to get involved and accept that not all of that involvement is going to equal cash dollars. Some of that involvement is going to be cheering you on or showing up to a meeting, and that matters too. Writing letters of support.
Do you have any thoughts that we haven't covered that you'd like to leave me with?
Yeah, I mean, shameless, please do go support our GoFundMe.
I do. We do.
Thank you. It matters. Support your local farmer wherever you are. Most local farms are not thriving. They are struggling. And this isn't meant to sound political. Regardless of your political leanings, the tariffs on grain coming in from Canada, especially for New England farmers, are going to be very detrimental because most New England grain comes from the Little Plains in Canada. The closest U.S. grown grain is really in Pennsylvania of any volume. So we're going to see more pinches. We're going to see higher prices now.
So for the grain that you feed your animals.
Yeah. So, if you know a livestock farm near you, especially if you're in New England based, please do support them because it's going to get harder for them with their grain prices.
Now, is that a price that is ultimately going to be passed on to the consumer? It costs us more to feed our pigs, so we're going to increase our pork prices.
Yeah, obviously I don't know what's going to happen, but my theory is the tariffs are going to happen on this grain. Small farms are going to have to raise their prices by, let's just argue and say like $5 a pound, like something substantial. It's going to be a lot. Commodity growers are going to have to raise their prices by $2 a pound. And the divide between the commodity price and the local price is going to get larger. And you're going to have even a bigger gap between what the grocery store sells chicken for example, and what we sell chicken for. And what we're worried about is we're reaching a ceiling. Like, how much more expensive can we make our chicken before people just don't buy it anymore?
I am so glad you have joined Jeremiah, Vernon, and I for this episode of One Bite is Everything. I hope that Vernon Family Farm's story has given you a fresh perspective on the real-life struggles and victories behind your local food. Your support for small farms matters, not just sometimes, but all the time, regularly. Shopping with a small farm has an impact every time you do it. Beyond voting for small farms with your dollars, you can be a helpful advocate. You can get involved in local zoning and make sure there are supportive regulations in your town. You can talk with your friends and resist the NIMBY attitudes together. I have been following along with Vernon Family Farm's story for some time. It's a cautionary tale for all of us. Please check the show notes for how to stay connected with them and how to support them if you are nearby by shopping at the farm store or from afar by contributing to their GoFundMe campaign. I'm so glad that you are here as part of One Bite is Everything as we begin our second 100 episodes, where we dive into issues relating to the food on your plate and connecting it to the larger world. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. Thank you to my awesome team, Russell Chapa on music and sound, and Sonia Dillon on co-production. The next 100 episodes are looking really good with you guys as a part of this. Thanks so much. I'm your host, Dana DePrima, and this is One Bite is Everything. See you next week.